Unit 3, Problem-Based Learning Roles. Lesson 2, the role of the recorder. What this lesson looks at. Firstly, we will give an overview of the lesson. We will look at the recorder role. Finally, we will look at the tasks of the recorder. Problem-based learning is a collaborative process involving a group of learners working together. In problem-based learning, each person has a role which develops a different set of skills. Each person should undertake a different role each time they engage in a new PBL problem. You, as a learner, will either be delegated a role by the facilitator or you will choose a role. The role of the recorder. The recorder, also known as the scribe, keeps the minutes of the meeting. This is known as the tutorial memo. In the text, please see Appendix 2 for a sample tutorial memo. In the role of the recorder, the team member develops written communication and analytical skills. At the meeting, the team should decide the date the memo should be posted by. This should be early enough to allow team members time to review the memo prior to the next meeting. At the start of the interim and closing meetings, the team discuss and give feedback about the memo. This should be no more than 5 minutes long. A good tutorial memo reflects the contents of the discussion. Sometimes the discussion may zigzag from point to point. The recorder should structure the memo logically according to the context of the discussion, rather than in a chronological sequence. The concepts could somehow be visually highlighted and followed by explanations and practical examples. In addition, the recorder should include a simple list of the main keywords discussed. The recorder should not add content from outside the discussion, unless specifically agreed in the discussion. For example, if the team did not have time to elaborate on something that was briefly mentioned, the team may decide that the recorder add this information as an appendix to the memo. During the meeting, the recorder can ask for clarification on discussion items that need more detail in order for the recorder to produce the memo. The tasks of the recorder. The recorder must participate in all meetings, observing the meeting and summarising the contents in the tutorial memo. They are responsible for keeping a record of the meeting. The recorder should not add content from outside the discussion. The tutorial memo contents for the opening meeting should contain a discussion, a description of how the team approach the topic identified in the trigger or the problem statement. Problem. The title of the problem in the form of a question, statement, or concept. A categorization of the brainstorming. Outline the concepts the team spoke about in the brainstorming session under the classified headings. Illustrations such as concept maps can be used here. Learning objectives. The agreed objectives, tasks on the basis of the chosen approach to the problem. How these learning objectives were allocated to team members. Observer feedback. The personal feedback the observer gave to each team member. And finally, keywords of the main topics covered in the meeting. The tutorial memo for interim meetings should contain the following. A brief discussion of the results of the tutorial memo from the previous meeting. A discussion of concepts, any of those not discussed in the opening meeting. For example, the initial opening meeting might discuss clarifying terms and defining the problem. However, brainstorm may take in the interim meeting. Observer feedback. The personal feedback the observer gave to each team member. And finally, keywords. of the main topics covered in the PBL meeting. For the closing meetings, the tutorial memo should contain a discussion summary of the tutorial memo from the previous meeting, the learning objectives identified in the previous session and how they were achieved. Discussion, well-structured discussion of the learning results, including the theory and application. Source, self-study sources studied by participants. Evaluation of the tasks and the learning results. Was the learning process effective? Why or why not? And what could have been done differently? Finally, observer feedback based on the group dynamics. Of course, keywords selected based on the main topics discussed in the session. Tips for being a recorder. It's important that the recorder be prepared. To do this, they must have the correct material, they must read the agenda prior to the meeting, and familiarise themselves with everyone who's in the meeting so they can refer to them correctly in the memo. Listening is also a key skill. It's also important not to record verbiage, but summarise the most important parts of the meeting, only recording fact and not opinions, as mentioned in Unit 2. At the end of the meeting, summarising and clarifying your notes with other team members. In the next, the observer in problem-based learning.